We have lots to talk about in today's video, including some trade talk around teams like Vancouver, Montreal, and Toronto. Plus, we got word today that former NHLer Alex Formenton has launched a $20 million lawsuit against his former agent. Plus, we have some more significant injuries, returns, and some other updates around the NHL coming up next. So welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. As I mentioned, we have lots to talk about here today. Of course, in case you're not aware, or if you missed it earlier, the Global Series is back. Of course, the Florida Panthers and the Dallas Stars are over playing in Finland. Both teams have a lot of Finnish players and some pretty high-level important players. So their team are from Finland as well. So it made sense they would be the teams to represent the NHL over there this year. Of course, because of the time difference, the games are run pretty early here in North America, depending on where you live. Anywhere around 2 or 3 o'clock in the afternoon. So today the Panthers did pick up the victory 6-4. Captain Barkov had a really good game. Of course, being from Finland, I'm sure he was, really looking forward to it. Not only from Finland, but from the town that they're playing in as well. Reinhardt had a really good game as well. And then from the Dallas side, I know Esselindell scored a goal. So certainly the Finnish players were putting on a good show and looked like a really good game. I didn't get to watch all of it. I got to watch about 2/3 of it. Looked like a pretty solid overall game. So certainly they will be going back at it again tomorrow. So check that out. Just remember it's on quite early because of the time difference in case you're wanting to be able to watch that. We saw some pretty big tilts in the NHL last night, some big fights, which really, I know fighting is certainly a part of hockey and you do get fights sometimes, but it's not often you see a couple, like multiple fights in the same night where they're just like, highlight reel type of fights, where you had in the Montreal-Washington game, Josh Anderson battled Tom Wilson. Josh Anderson definitely got the better of Wilson and put him down. Those two actually do have a lot of history. For those who don't know, they've been pretty intense rivals and have gone at it before, especially dating back to their days in junior. So certainly, nothing new to those guys. And Vasily Podkolzin in Edmonton, as they were doing battle with Nashville, at quite the tilt with Jeremy Lauzon. And Podkolzin, I know when he was drafted, he didn't really hear anything about fighting. It was more about skill. But he's a good size player. Clearly not afraid to fight. Had to probably add some different elements to his game to try to stick in the NHL and carve out a role with the Oilers here after being traded from Vancouver. And he absolutely leveled Jeremy Lauzon. Both of those clips I do have posted on my X account, so if you certainly want to check out those highlights and you haven't seen them, just come check me out on X, follow my account, and you'll see all the clips. Of course, there I can share all kinds of NHL highlights and not have to worry about the NHL demonetizing or putting strikes against us or anything like that. Can't do that here on YouTube. We get in a lot of trouble, but on X we're certainly not getting into that. So certainly I like to share lots of clips and talk about what's going on throughout the league. So if you haven't been following me or haven't on the platform, I certainly highly recommend you check it out. A couple of other injury updates here before we get into some of the other stuff around the league today. Matt Barzal apparently has left the New York Islanders on the road trip and headed back home to Long Island to be treated and evaluated for an upper body injury. No timeline has been given, but the Islanders press release does say that once he's had a chance to be evaluated by doctors, that they'll update a timeline probably within the next day or so sometime over the weekend. But certainly the Islanders are already struggling. They've been shut out numerous times. They're averaging, I think, just over 2 goals a game. So for a team that's really struggling to score, to lose like your top offensive weapon is certainly not good at all. That's going to be a major blow if he's out for any significant period of time, especially where they're trying to get out of their funk and kind of find themselves here. The Maple Leafs today also announced that they've assigned defenseman Yanni Hakanpää and forward Connor Dewar to the American Hockey League on a conditioning assignment. Of course, we talked about the fact yesterday that both were nearing a return from injury and that they should be able to play sometime here in the near future. So, of course, those conditioning assignments, they can play, I think it's a maximum of 3 games over 6 days that they're allowed to do. So they could be recalled after 1. Sometimes it'll be 2. Depends on how they feel everything went for the player, if there's any setbacks or not. So we could have some decisions coming from Toronto on their recalls. Because, of course, if they're recalled, they're going to have to find space for them, right? So we'll have to see how that all works out, which we're going to touch on a little bit in the rumor section of the video coming up here in just a few minutes. Another signing today as well. The Nashville Predators today announced that they've signed Ozzy Weisblatt to a 2-year, 2-way contract, which will pay him league minimum $775,000 at the NHL level. And the NHL today announced that Matvei Michkov, of course, the first-round pick for the Philadelphia Flyers, making his debut this year, is acknowledged as Rookie of the Month for the month of October, putting up 9 points in his first 11 games. Probably the leader, I'd say. I know it's early, lots of hockey to be played yet. I think before the season would have been one of the favorites to win the Calder Trophy, and so far he'd be right near the top of that list. Has had a really solid first month of NHL action. As I mentioned earlier, there was a video on the channel in case you haven't had a chance to watch it or if you want further analysis, more details, but I will touch on it here just to kind of summarize. But former NHL player, former Ottawa Senator Alex Formenton has launched a lawsuit against his former agent Wade Arnold in Newport Sports for $20.5 million, alleging negligence, breach of contract, and breach of fiduciary duty, essentially basically saying it's his fault for loss of income over a couple of seasons. Of course, we know in the 2022 offseason, that is when his ELC contract with the Ottawa Senators was up. The lawsuit alleges that he was given a qualifying offer from the Ottawa Senators, but he rejected it. Now, coming off the season that he did, it makes sense that he wasn't going to sign it because he would have been able to earn much more money than what the qualifying offer would have given him. They're obviously those are going to be 1-year contracts, and it's a small bump in pay. And he had a really good season, proven to be a solid NHLer. Great speed, was dangerous shorthanded. Just had a real good year. Looked like he was going to be a big part of the team moving forward. But that same summer is when all the allegations came out against, which we now know he's one of those 5 players, but against numerous NHL players from the 2018 Canadian World Junior Club that were accused of sexual assault. We didn't find out for quite a long time later that he was indeed one of those players that ended up now facing charges. But I think at the time there was a lot of speculation that, of course, before we knew of who the players were, some of the names that were floated out there were right, some were not. But in Formenton's case, it just seemed like there was a lot of rumors around the Ottawa team that they somehow, I don't know if they knew something. There was talk that, because at that point, that was before the team sold, Eugene Melnick's daughters were still running the franchise, that they didn't want him back. I don't really know what's going on. Obviously, if they offered him a qualifying offer, they had to acknowledge and accept the fact that he could have come back, but I think they knew he wouldn't accept that. And then there really wasn't much for negotiation. So essentially, his agent advised, he says that his allegations basically say that his agent didn't advise him that if he did accept it, that he could negotiate his next contract as early as the January after, which would be his 3rd contract. So he didn't know that. He also accuses the agent of not telling him or advising him that there was a possibility of talking to the Senators, working on an agreement to extend the qualifying offer. And there's lots of other details in there, which I get into in the other video. But essentially, he's blaming his agent for the fact that he had to go to Europe, make a lot less money, and now he's not even playing hockey at all. Saying basically that his agent didn't do his job and was negligent. Says the agent didn't give proper advice and all that. So we'll see where this goes. I know it's a lot of people saying today that it's not a good look for him, who's on trial now for some pretty heinous crimes, accuses some, pretty bad things. And, for him to be kind of pointing finger and blaming things on everybody else may not be a great look. But like I said in the other video, these players are technically innocent until proven guilty. However, based on all the information that we learned of through the investigation that was made public and released, it does not look good. And we'll see. They are expected to plead not guilty, and the trial is set right now for September of 2025. But it is a possibility if they get through all the pretrial stuff, it is possible it could start in the spring this April. So we'll have to follow both these lawsuits. Of course, the lawsuit that Formenton's against his agent, and of course the charges that they're being faced with in court to see how things materialize down the road. Now, as I mentioned, in the rumor mill, various teams to talk about, including Montreal, Toronto, and Vancouver today. We'll start with Montreal. I know reports from Marco D'Amico, Habs writer, was talking today about the fact in his article that Jake Evans is drawing a lot of attention around the league. Now, Jake Evans is a pending unrestricted free agent, and the Habs have a decision to make with him. Essentially, he said that he talked to a variety of NHL executives who would be quite fond of acquiring this player if he were available. They said a combination of the fact that he's got a decent amount of experience now. Obviously, he's had a really good start to his season. Good on the penalty kill. Shows good leadership at times, and it can be just a versatile kind of player that can go up and down your lineup. So there's lots to like about his game. If you're Montreal, I think there's lots of players right now you're looking for more from. He's one of those players I think they're fairly satisfied with. However, he is going to be 29 years old when his contract expires this coming summer, and the big question remains, because he's probably going to be looking for a decent-sized raise, does it make sense to retain him and to extend him? He's going to be, obviously, if he signs a 3, 4, 5 year deal, you're looking at somebody who's going to be playing well into their early and mid 30s in that contract when you have a rebuilding team and certainly trying to make it about the future. You get obviously Suzuki and Caulfield are more like mid 20s now, and then you've got the up and coming guys behind them like Slavkovsky and Hudson and Demidov on the way. All going to be in their early 20s. Does it make sense to have somebody in their 30s? Well, you do need some veterans around. So there is that. They have more than enough right now, and some of them they'd like to move on from. Like I said, I am pretty confident that Dvorak and Armia will not be back in Montreal next year. They would move on from them as soon as they're able to be honest. On the back end, Matheson and Savard, I'm not convinced that they're going to be moved just yet. Maybe, but I think there's a better chance they stay. I know there's been talk that we talked about yesterday. Do they maybe need to make a change in goal, bring in a veteran there? Obviously, besides Armia and Dvorak up front, you've got Josh Anderson, you got Brendan Gallagher. There's lots of experience there. Gallagher's actually been doing a little bit better, and with his contract and everything, I think he's probably going to ride this one out for another year or two, maybe get bought out then, or maybe, I'm not sure if he can finish, if maybe he'll be an LTIR guy. It's hard to say because of the way he plays. Hard to say what happens with Gallagher, but in Montreal, Evans is going to be one of those unique players, and it's not that they don't like him. They do like the guy, but there's also good value in what he brings, and they have to weigh out the pros and cons here. Is he going to be part of the solution? Is he a veteran we want to keep around? What would he take for a contract? And if we did trade him, what's his value going to be coming back, right? And they have to evaluate all that. And right now, basically all the article from D'Amico was saying, he's not saying that Montreal is going to trade him or they're going to sign him, just saying that there's lots of interest in the player. And if he continues to have a strong year and Montreal continues to be where they are in the standings and not going to be in the playoffs, there's going to be getting a lot of phone calls for his services, and they have to, I guess, make that choice. What do they do? So I'm not saying he's going to be moved, but he's a player generating a lot of interest, and he's going to be a player that the Habs have to make a decision on, and we'll see where it goes. There'll be lots of teams inquiring on his services later in the year. And in Toronto, of course, we talked about the fact that Hakanpää and Dufour are going to be going to the American Hockey League here for the weekend and maybe longer. We'll see, on a conditioning assignment, play at least a game or two. But Elliot Friedman was reporting today that Matt Benning, who came back from San Jose in the Timothy Liljegren trade, may not stay in Toronto. He says it's a possibility, not a given, but a possibility that they flip Benning. Now, there was also lots of rumors around Benning in the week leading up to that trade with the Leafs where they acquired Liljegren for Benning and some picks. Now, there was other teams that were interested in this guy. So there's definitely other teams that were, talking to San Jose and were kind of considering him. So I don't think the Leafs would have a difficult time flipping him if they want to do that. Maybe they get, it's not going to be a big return. At most, you're probably looking at, a 4th round pick, maybe a 5th. Maybe it's a B prospect. I don't know. It's not going to be anything significant, but it could clear more money off the cap and free up a roster spot. So at the end of the day, it's not a given that Benning stays. And if Hakanpää goes down for this conditioning assignment and looks good and feels good, and they want to bring him up and get him in the lineup, they're going to have to do something. And this might be the easy way to go about it. Benning's not really, at this point, hasn't really been integrated to the team and all that. If they choose to make a move, like if it's not Benning, it might end up having to be like a guy like Connor Timmins, who I know they've seemed to be fond of so far this year. So it's difficult to say where this is going to go. But the Leafs, if they want to get these guys off of IR and into their lineup, they're going to have some roster and cap situations that they have to factor in and make some tough decisions. So certainly a guy like Benning could be flipped, and there could be other moves coming for Toronto as well to kind of see how they can fit them into the lineup. So look for some moves in the Leafs probably as early as either the weekend or into next week. And in Vancouver, again, we want to talk about Elias Pettersson. And this is not, again, we're not saying he's going to be traded, but I know I do follow the Donnie and Daly show, probably one of my main sources I go to for Canuck information and what's going on with the team and, the rumors and what's going on behind the scenes, so to speak. Rick Dollywell is obviously very well connected and seems to have a lot of good info. So I do, follow that show, and they're reporting quite closely. And they had a poll on their show that I noticed today was, should they trade Elias Pettersson? And basically looking at the fact that Pettersson has not had a great start to the year. The second half last year wasn't great. He was on fire the early part of last year, and then it tailed off. And a lot of people think he's broken. Like, what happened to EP40? Like, he's just not the same player. And if you look at all the advanced data you get from like NHL Edge on the website there, like his skating speeds are down, his shot, how hard you shoot the puck, like that is down. There was some talk last year about knee tendonitis. Apparently there's been some talk this year as well. I'm like, why are they not taking care of that? Tendonitis is not generally a long-term issue. And with the amount of access to care they would have, you would think this would be something that they'd be able to kind of nip and get fixed. And if it's really, something that is more than that, and if it's more serious and requires a surgery or something else, maybe he should have it looked after, because he is not the same player. So Donnie and Daly had a big debate on their show today about, do you trade him? Do you consider this? We know last year before he signed his contract extension that they had some serious conversations about it, and there was believed to be a really serious offer from the Hurricanes to make an acquisition that they went to him and said, listen, we don't want to do this. We want to sign you, but if we can't continue on with this uncertainty, we need to know where you stand, and we have a serious trade offer for you that we have to consider this if you're not going to stay. So would you like to stay and get this done, or do we kind of have to go down this road? And that's kind of what, moved it along to get him signed. And really largely since the contract signing, things haven't gone well. But they had to debate, like, what happens if you trade him and then he figures out his game and he goes on to be a 100-point plus player like he used to be with another team? That's going to hurt real bad. How do you replace this guy? It's not easy, right? Who do you get coming back in a trade? Well, of course, you don't know, because you don't know who the teams are going to be. Is there going to be a 100-point player coming back like he has been in the past? Probably not. You probably have a player that has that potential, but it's unlikely to get, it's not like you're going to, look at the Matthew Tkachuk, Jonathan Huberdeau trade. That looked like a really good trade for Calgary given the circumstances, and look how it's worked out, right? Florida's won the Stanley Cup, and Calgary has Huberdeau, who's, yes, he's playing better this year, but still, largely, that contract has not aged well and has not gone well for Hubie in Calgary. It doesn't always, not everything's a good fit in all situations, right? So, as Dollywell was going with this argument of, well, what happens if you do this and he figures it out? Donnie had a good argument of, well, what happens if you don't and this continues and it doesn't get fixed and the old EP40 doesn't come back? Then what? You're stuck with this massive contract for somebody that's not earning it. And he has a full no trade clause that kicks in, but it doesn't kick in until next offseason. So if they're going to make a move, they'd have to do it before then, before July 1st. So, I don't think this is going to be anything they're going to rush into. They have to be awfully careful with this, because this is a star player who has proven in the past he can be a star player and a top guy, and they don't grow on trees. They're really hard to come by. You normally have to draft and develop, which they've done. And yes, I don't know what's going on to the fact of why he's not himself and hasn't been for an extended period of time now, but you do have to be extremely careful, because they're tough trades to win. You may not be a better team, and you could end up looking like really foolish. Like, look at one of the bad trades in Canuck history was trading Cam Neely, who went on to be, such a top-notch goal scorer for the Boston Bruins for so long, right? It could haunt a franchise. It really can. And, it's one thing if the player won't sign or the player demands a trade. Like, there's certain situations. You look at some of the top talent that's been moved in the last 5-10 years. A lot of the circumstances around the moves were really because the team had no choice. They very much have a choice right now. But we've also heard Friedman talk about the fact that he wonders if it's kind of more of a mental block for Pettersson and having a hard time blocking out all the stuff from the fans and social media and all that. Vancouver can be a very tough market to play in. He would know this firsthand. He was not like he's brand new to the market. He's been there long enough. But, I don't know. As the pressure grows, as the team does better, maybe it's taking its toll on him. I'm not sure. But I know Friedman's had some speculation around, and that was just his thoughts. He didn't really have anything concrete to say for sure that was going on. But, at the end of the day, Vancouver needs him to be his old self, and he hasn't been. Should a trade be something they consider? Or if you're the GM or you're leading this team, do you have to preach patience here and do what you can to help him find it? Let me know what you think. And if so, give me some mock trades just for fun in the comments so we can talk about it further and see what kind of return you would think a huge haul would be in return if that deal was going to be made. I know they did on the show say they talked to some Western Conference executives who said they would, even though he's struggled for a while, they would take him in a heartbeat. So there's definitely would be interest if they go down that road, but it's just a slippery slope and you got to be very, very careful. Let me know what you think they should do about Pettersson in the comments, and we'll talk about it further as well as all the other news and rumors in today's video. Thank you very much for watching, and I will catch you next time.